Thanks so much for being here today. My name is Vince Parisi, and like Latoya said, I'm a first-year Master of City and Regional Planning student at Georgia Tech, specializing in transportation. Today, I'll be talking about a research idea I have for the Chicago Beltline, one that would encourage active transportation, connect neighborhoods, and honor the city's rich history at the forefront of urban planning. So for those of you who don't know the history of Chicago, it grew initially due to its location on the west tip of Lake Michigan, allowing for water trade between the northeastern US and the rest of the country through river systems. It was home to the world's first skyscraper, the Union Stockyards, the 1893 Columbian Exposition, which was incredibly influential to architecture, and a lasting influence of which can be seen here in Washington, D.C., and would eventually become the railroad hub of the entire U.S. It industrialized rapidly and hosted one of the world's first derivative markets. But what people don't know about Chicago is the history of its park and boulevard system, or additionally, its motto is Urbs in Hordo, or City in a Garden. And this is where my research begins today. Before I started grad school at Georgia Tech, I was living on Chicago's south side and working in AmeriCorps term, helping run after-school programs in homeless shelters on Chicago's south and west side. I grew up in the northwest suburbs, and through this experience got to see parts of the city that I hadn't seen before or had occasion to go to. And Chicago typically has wide streets, but what I began to notice through my service are streets like this, where there are lanes of traffic on both sides and tree and grass-lined medians running through them. As a student who was going into urban planning school, I began to think how this street could be adapted to be more human scale and pedestrian friendly. And currently, through many of the streets, the median is not used as a park space, it's just seen by cars driving through the area. These streets make up the 26-mile Chicago Park and Boulevard System loop. This idea came out of industrialized 19th century Chicago when early civic leaders planned and envisioned a green belt of park and connected boulevards encircling the city, allowing passive recreation. The city was industrialized, heavily polluted. People would change their clothes up to 2 times a day because of the amount of soot that would get in their clothing, or go to cemeteries for green space. So early forward-thinking people in Chicago wanted to give citizens and residents a place to enjoy parks and recreation away from the crowded, polluted city. As it expanded rapidly, the city blew past the initial outskirts of the city and where the boulevards and parks were planned, meaning that they began to lie through some of the most historic south and west side neighborhoods. Over time, these boulevards were created before automobiles, and over time they were adapted to vehicular traffic and now fit into the current transportation network of the city. In my opinion, they have strayed from their original use as a method for scenic and pleasure recreation for residents of the city and enjoying park space. They also connect 8 of Chicago's most historic parks and go to the southeast lakefront of the city. Additionally, these neighborhoods go through some of Chicago's most disinvested neighborhoods. Especially on the south and west side, you can see the paradox of what the boulevards have become today. This is a house that was once likely a prominent home of a Chicagoan with incredible architecture and good bones, but it's boarded up today currently because these neighborhoods have received so much disinvestment over the years. After completing the AmeriCorps term, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, on the east side of what is known as the Atlanta Beltline. For those of you who don't know about the Atlanta Beltline, it was a 1999 master's thesis from a graduate of my program at Georgia Tech named Ryan Gravel. He identified an abandoned rail corridor that encircled the city and envisioned reusing it as an urban forest and method of active and public transportation. If you've ever been to Atlanta, you can see the tremendous impact it's had on the city. This is what the Beltline typically looks like on a Thursday or Wednesday evening, not even a weekend. The Beltline has also had a tremendous impact on the economic development of the city. At the end of 2023, it's received $9 billion in private investment, and its goals are $10 billion economic development dollars, 48,000 construction jobs, 50,000 permanent jobs, and 5,600 units of affordable housing. However, even more important than the economic benefit it had is that it allows Atlantans to have a way to enjoy their city through active recreation. It's not necessarily a bike-friendly city, and the Beltline allows cyclists and pedestrians a separation from road traffic to enjoy recreation opportunities, economic opportunities, and social opportunities. In Chicago, it's typically seen as a more bike-friendly city than Atlanta. However, it lacks a comprehensive trail network. You can see from 2018 to 2022, there was a 60% increase in protected bike lane construction. However, in that same period, trail construction only increased by 1%. There are 2 proposed trails in Chicago, the Altenheim Line and the Paseo Trail, and 2 current off-street trails, the Bloomingdale Trail and the Lakefront Trail. If Chicago were to use the Park and Boulevard system to reimagine its trail system network, it would allow a 48% increase and all of Chicago's current and planned trails to connect to each other. The Lakefront Trail and the Bloomingdale Trail are great options, but as a cyclist, they're disconnected from many social and economic opportunities. The Lakefront Trail is beautiful and it goes along the lake, but it's disconnected from the city through Lakeshore Drive. If Chicago were to reimagine the Park and Boulevard system as a trail, it would allow people not only to enjoy active recreation, but get from point A to point B. Additionally, the Beltline has had a tremendous impact on housing development. If you've been on it, you've seen the high-rises that go on both sides of the Beltline on the east side and the construction that is continuously happening. In Chicago, a similar opportunity exists. On the left side is the west side and the right side is the south side, and you can see where the boulevards run through them. The black polygons represent city-owned vacant land, not just vacant houses, but city-owned residentially zoned vacant land. If there is a social and economic driver, like the reimagination of these trails, it presents an incredible opportunity for the city to build and develop more housing. And this is something I'd like to explore over the next year and a half. Additionally, reimagine these boulevards with a focus on active and pedestrian safety would allow them to address some of their Vision Zero goals. The boulevard and park system intersects 4 communities impacted by high crashes, and reimagining them with a focus on safety might allow the city to reduce some of its pedestrian crashes and move further towards Vision Zero. Finally, Chicago isn't the only city with a park and boulevard system. There are similar systems in Buffalo, New York, Indianapolis, Indiana, and Kansas City, Missouri. And if Chicago can take the early lead on reimagining it, it can inspire development in other American cities. Additionally, at the top left is Medellin, Colombia, which used the boulevards for a Green Corridors project, where they took plants that absorbed the most amount of CO2 and planted them extensively along the boulevard system. This actually decreased temperatures by 4.5 degrees Celsius in these areas. And as American cities enter an age where they're going to be facing more challenges with urban heat islands and extreme heat, this could additionally be a way for Chicago to further its climate and resiliency goals. Finally, in conclusion, I would like to stress that this idea is still in development. Over the next year and a half, I'm going to continue to research it and ask questions like, how would an urban trail impact the economic growth of the city, particularly in housing? What might it look like, and what might actual implementation take? Who has the right of way? What are the historic requirements of the district? And what might the design look like? And finally, to avoid some of the criticism that the Beltline has faced with green gentrification, how can the city preserve the diversity and history of the neighborhoods the Park and Boulevard system currently intersect and use it as a source of inspiration while preserving affordable housing? I'm really excited to take the inspiration and ideas from Georgia Tech and apply it to a greater American context, helping more people to enjoy active transportation, get from point A to point B, have better economic and social opportunities, all while furthering climate and resilience